Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of Around the Octagon. Today, we have a special guest. We are joined by a professional mixed martial artist and UFC veteran fighting out of Team Upstate Karate in Simpsonville, South Carolina, Weston Wilson. Weston, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. Two things. First off, how was practice? And even more so, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Practice was good. I was all focused around Wonderboy, getting ready for the Bomb Theme fight. So we were doing just a little bit of cardio work and a little bit of situational technique, cardio stuff. It was good. It's end of the week for our training, and so it's just a nice way to kind of blow out the lungs and go into the weekend.
100%, man. And like I was just touching on earlier, we're all pumped up for that Wonderboy fight. So glad to hear you guys are getting the work in. You guys are professionals. You always are, but love to hear it. But kind of wanted to get into this a little bit. You have quite the story about the different various mixed martial arts you've trained and whatnot. So for everyone listening, can you kind of give a little background on how you got into MMA?
Yeah. So I started out back in 2006. We moved to Brazil. I didn't get to wrestle anymore. So this was like before guys were like young getting into MMA. So I was 16, I think. Yeah, 16. And so I started doing MMA full time, put up wrestling and started putting work in towards being, working towards UFC. It took me way longer than majority of guys. It's funny, Rory McDonald was in town last week, and Rory and I are the same age, and we kind of started around the same time. And obviously his career trajectory went way fast, like way up, and he was like one of the first, what they called the hybrids of guys that were doing that all like from a young age, full time. Now you got a ton of those guys. But yeah, I was part of. I feel like I was part of that. I just didn't make it to the level I wanted to until my 30s. But it's all good. So I started in Brazil, training at Brazilian top team back when we had I was in Sao Paulo though, so I wasn't in the Rio, so I was the satellite office. But guys on that team were like Anderson Silva, the Nogueira brothers. They were all in the Rio area. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got my butt kicked quite a bit.
So I guess moving on from there a little bit. So you always knew like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be a mixed martial artist. I want to compete.
Yeah. But so where I went a little different than a lot of those, first wave of guys that were just all in on combat sports. I went to college. Well, I served a 2-year mission for my church, and then I went to college. First 2 years of college, I didn't train or fight because I was a terrible college student and I had terrible grades and I couldn't manage it. Then I got married, and then all of a sudden I learned how to manage my schedule and school and working full time, and got into fighting and I got back into fighting. So I took a 4-year break after high school. Got back in, so I was in my 20s at that point, and haven't looked back since. I was in Utah then, so I was training at the Pit Elevated. We had a ton of guys in the UFC at that time. We had Steve Seiler, we had Ramsey Nijam, we had Court McGee, we had Josh Berkman, a couple other guys that went 0-2 and out. But yeah, at that time, Utah was like a hotbed for MMA. And we were putting guys in the Ultimate Fighter every year. So that was really cool. And so early on my amateur career, I got a lot of exposure to top level guys. And once again, just get my butt kicked. Moved to Dallas, trained out in Dallas for a while, then moved to California. And in California, I got to train with a lot of really good guys. And that was kind of the turning point. And then I was, for work, because my mom and my wife made me get a full-time job. They're like, no, we're never going to go all in on fighting. And so it's probably why it took me longer to get here, because I was working a job. But now I don't have to fight. I make way more money designing software than I do fighting. So, I just enjoy it, and it's a good release. And it's fun, and it's a passion of mine. So yeah, I mean, and I get to meet really cool guys and hang out with really cool guys and you know share a lot of uh I had to you know share a lot of really cool experiences and have stories I should say for my kids and my grandkids when I get older.
100%, man. So I guess before we get too far into your journey, like I noticed you're one of the few guys that rocks no nickname. So just kind of curious, is there a reason for that, or do you just think the Weston
I
Wilson rolls well, and it's like,
I just feel like the time has passed. You know, I'm 30, I'm 36 years old. Like,
Right.
if I was gonna have a nickname, I would have had a nickname, but nothing stuck, and there was never any real nickname. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Steven's like forever tried to get people to like give me a nickname, but I just
nothing
don't know.
stuck.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of moving on to your amateur career and your professional career. So you started fighting pro back in 2014, and you fought all around in the regional circuit, fought in Bellator, LFA, and then ultimately the UFC where you are now. So at what point did you realize that, you know, you had the skills to go and compete on the highest level?
I think like I always knew because in the training room, like I would do so well against a lot of these guys. Like when I was in Utah, we had a lot of Team Alpha Male guys that would come in. We were kind of sister schools, and I could hang with a lot of those guys, and it was always like what was holding me back was always like fight night. Like I just could never get the mental aspect right, and then it wasn't until I moved out and started training with Wonderboy, and I got and obviously Wonderboy, we have Chris Weidman who would come in and do part of his camps with us, and so it wasn't until then that like I realized like everybody's nervous before fights, even like getting to see like Chris Weidman, the former champion of the world, and how nervous he would get, and I'd be like, okay, like this is like perfectly normal, like it's okay, and then things would start clicking, and I could, I started performing to the level I knew I could, and I think my last fight really showed that I finally got everything dialed in terms of performance and the mental aspect of fight night versus just going in and you know relying solely on technique. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot, like there's the mental side and then there's the technical side, and so I've always had like good technique. I've always had like a really long frame, and I'm tall and lanky for my weight class, and I'm not weak. I'm pretty strong. Uh, so now it's like being able to use that when I need to, and I can. And so I think that was the big adjustment. And then, to be honest, COVID was probably the biggest opportunity for me to really progress in the sport.
Just a lot of free time and whatnot, where it's like I can focus on training and that kind of way, or
No. So a lot of times when like stuff happens, like COVID, uh, there's a lot of opportunity to those that are strategic enough to take it. So during COVID, if you will, if you remember, you still had 100% of the fighters all trying to fight,
Right.
but you had only 20% of promotions putting on shows. So that means that there's a deficit of 80%. So you'd have to be like that top 20% of fighters in order to get on these cards, right? I found it as an equal playing ground for me. So I took a look and I said, all right, what can I do that other fighters can't do? Because I was never a big ticket seller. I was never a big trash talker. I was never like a big star. And so like I didn't ever before COVID, I didn't have leverage with promotions. I was always a guy they'd bring in to build up another guy. And if I won, okay, great. And if I didn't win, then it built up the guy that they're trying to build up. So I was 7-5, my record before COVID. During COVID, I went 9-2. Uh, and the reason being is I started a software company because that's what I do. And I started doing pay-per-view and event management for promotions. So I designed this software called Combat Labs, and I would stream all of the promotions pay-per-views, and I would let them keep 100% of the streaming profit if they put me on the card with the opponents I wanted. So then all of a sudden I became the guy that that the promotions would invest in to build up, because they didn't need ticket sellers anymore. They needed a way to make money, and I became their way to make money. So I used COVID as my opportunity to really advance in the industry, in the sport. And so, like I said, I went 9-2 during COVID, during that from 2021 to 2023. In that 2-year span, I went 9-2. I had 10-2 if you count my boxing match.
We'll count it. We'll count it. 10-2, we'll call it.
Yeah, I fought a kid who was 11-1 in boxing on a 5-day notice, and I beat him for my debut
That's
in
pretty
boxing.
sweet, man. That's one hell of a story. Like, way to take advantage and capitalize on a down situation like that.
Yeah, so I used COVID to my advantage, and I became one of the most active fighters in America during that time. And then, as as more shows opened up, they would start using my software, my streaming platform, and it got to the point where I was making so much money, I would just sponsor fights, and I'd be like, okay, I'll pay for my fight, I'll pay for and so then it snowballed from there, and I got to pick the fights that I wanted to. I got to work with all these different promoters. My name got out there, and so then I started getting put on the short list for the UFC, and when the opportunity came, we were ready for it.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of wanted to circle back a little bit. I know you had a Bellator fight pretty early on in your career, so I'm just kind of curious, like, how did that come to fruition? And do you think that experience kind of helped, like, lighten the shock or surprise of initially getting into the UFC?
Yeah, so that was a good. When you asked, like, the moment where I thought I could make it, it was that Bellator fight. So I was actually supposed to fight a pretty good kid, Gaston Rieno. Well, I don't know how good he was, but he was a kickboxer from Uruguay, and he pulled out a week before, so they gave me like a bum. But yeah, that fight, I don't know. They just reached out to me randomly, asked me if I would fight on their, because I was training in Dallas at the time, and they were looking for local guys. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And at the time, that was like the most money I ever made. I made $3,000 that fight. So I was like ecstatic. But that fight also, because I was working for a software company, I wasn't getting paid like hardly any money at the time. And that fight, I was like, dude, I made as much in one night as I made like in a month for my job. And so that all of a sudden like made me like, hey, you're worth more than that. So both in my job and in fighting, I was like, I know I'm worth more. And so that was actually like, that was like a reigning, like a one of those defining moments for me, where I was like, oh, you know what, you can do more in life. And so I did. I used that. I ended up working for another company, like doubled my salary. That's what took me to California. So actually, the Bellator fight was probably that fight where it was like you could fight on the big stages, and it also was like it gave me like the biggest like confidence boost for my professional career, to where I left my last like that. I left that company. I was like, dude, the company that I was working for, I was like, I'm out. Like, you guys aren't using me for what I feel like I'm worth. And so I went and honestly, I'm still with the same boss to this day. Like, we've exited several companies together. And so yeah, the Bellator fight, that's probably the fight that like put me on the trajectory in life that I'm on now.
Incredible. So going into it, so you said you took like the longer road to get to the UFC, but what was it actually like when you finally got that phone call, being 10-2, on like the hot streak that you were on? Dana or Hunter calls your phone. How are you feeling?
Oh, so it didn't work that way. So all right, so Joanderson Brito's opponent pulled out, and they were looking for somebody, and it was down between me and I think Dennis Bazookia, and they wanted Bazookia, and Bazookia was fighting that Friday night, not before the fight, but like 2 weeks before, in that time frame. And so I was told if Bazookia makes it out without any injuries, he's going to get signed. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. He did. He made it out without getting any injuries. And then I still kept cutting weight, though. I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep cutting weight just in case. Like, until they announce somebody, I'm going to keep cutting weight. And so a couple days pass. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. No, I think it was Tuesday morning. I was told like it was a no-go, and I wake up to all these messages on Instagram saying basically, hey, we heard you're fighting Brito, what's going on? And I call my manager and I'm like, hey, what is this? And he's like, dude, as of 3 a.m., last night, they weren't signing you. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I'll just ignore these guys. And then they were like sending me Brito's contract with my name in it. And so I didn't get a call from anybody. I got literally these reporters, that the MMA media, that were like breaking the news to me. And then my manager called me at like 10 a.m. saying, hey, I guess we got signed. And so like it was just one of those things where I guess Sean Shelby just decided to just move forward with it and not tell anybody until like after the fact. And then they sent me all the paperwork and everything, and I was like, what? So yeah, it was wild. It was just it. I don't know. It wasn't one of those like big moments where like, hey, you made it. Like it was more the media like broke it all to me, and I don't know. It's so cool.
When that news was broken to you, oh, sorry, Ron, but when that news was broken to you,
whatever.
When that news was broken to you, because you just got notice that you're filling in short notice fight against Joanderson Brito. Like, was that coming with the initial UFC contract, or is that just like, all right, you're filling in for this fight?
No, it was with the contract. So like I knew something was up. And so like I called Coach T and I called Wonderboy. Actually, I couldn't get in touch with Coach T, so I called Wonderboy first, and then I had Wonderboy call Coach T, and then we broke the news to him. But yeah, no, it was, I don't know. Yeah, it all like it was like, hey, it's 4-fight deal starting at this pay. You're gonna fight Brito as your first opponent, or your first opponent. Got to make weight. And so yeah, and they basically told me too. They're like, we don't expect much out of you for this fight. Like, just go in and do the best you can. And so I did. I mean, and I almost submitted them, but almost doesn't count. So
moving on. I mean, after your first win in the UFC, I remember seeing you on the mic, and you said two things, or at least one thing that stuck out to me. You asked for the fight in Salt Lake City, and then you also asked for a Topps rookie card. I recently saw that you got the Topps rookie card. Can you describe that feeling of getting? Because I feel like that's like like every boy's dream who opens cards, opens packs. You think, I could see myself on a card one day. You have that vision, and then puberty hits, and you realize, like me, like I'm not that athletic. I'm never making it far in sports. But how did that feel?
Dude, I mean, it was like you said, whether you still believe it or not, like people will convince you that you can't, right? And I had wrestling coaches who told me like I was a average, and never that good. And out of all of the kids and the talent on our team, and we were a top 30 team in the Scholastic rankings. And so for me to get that, it was like validation. Like I proved you wrong to all my coaches growing up. So yeah, it was pretty awesome. And just signing it. And it's funny because like all the kids at my kids' school, elementary school, they're all like, oh man, it's so cool. Like we saw your dad's on a sports card, which they're actually dropping in the 27th, so in 2 weeks, or in a week. They're dropping in a week. Yeah.
I got to find a way to get my hands on one of those, man.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. The tops 2025 cards are dropping in a week. So
Nice.
It's awesome. So I was kind of wondering, like, you've been around in a lot of Wonderboy's camps, been around at a lot of, his events, and you've seen a lot of guys just all around. So have there been any like events that you've been at, whether it's been a weigh-in or really anything, where you've seen someone that kind of left you a little bit starstruck?
It's funny because like before Sean Strickland got like really big, I was training with him and we were training partners like me, him, Raymond Daniels, Chris Curtis, like we were on the regional scene together. So I don't know. There's really never been somebody that I was starstruck. I'll tell you, like back when I tried out for the Ultimate Fighter season, what was it, 22, when it was Connor and Uriah Faber. The Diaz brothers was cool. No, scratch that. You know who? Forrest Griffin.
Yeah.
Forrest Griffin. First time I went to PI, I was fighting for Tough Enough. This was my last fight before the UFC. It was me, Chase Hooper, my little brother, and we were at the PI, and I stopped for like just to grab a little bite to eat, and Forrest decides to sit down and just chatted with me forever, like we were like best friends, and so that was cool. The other person, because he was like my first favorite fighter, because like back in the day, he was the only one that was like me, went to school, everything like that, was Rich Franklin. And so I got to meet Rich Franklin a couple years back. He came into our gym here, and Rich Franklin was I was I would say starstruck, but like it was definitely like very, very cool to meet Rich Franklin.
It's funny you mentioned Forrest Griffin, because I was talking to Connor Matthews recently, and he said like the same thing. He was like, "Yeah, dude, like I got Forrest Griffin's number. Like this is freaking awesome." So it's pretty cool to hear that. Like, that's a guy that I think everyone collectively is like, "Yeah, that's cool."
Yeah, Forrest is super cool. Yeah, I don't know, like Dominic Cruz got a call my last fight, and I was always a Dominic Cruz fan. See, I met TJ and Uriah like when I was young, and all the Team Alpha Male guys. Chad Mendes is probably out of the Team Alpha Male crew. Chad Mendes is probably my favorite though. That guy, he was so fun. Chad is super cool. But yeah, I don't know. I would say Forrest is he's probably the guy that most starstruck over. Forrest or Rich, yeah. But then again, like I haven't met Anderson. I love Anderson Silva. And see Wonderboy's met Anderson, and he says Anderson's like super cool, and GSP as well. So I don't know. I haven't met either of them, and they're really cool. They seem really cool. So, but I would probably say Rich and Forrest. Those are the two where I was actually starstruck. And the Diaz brothers were really cool. Yeah, Nick and Nate were cool.
To say, I noticed you posted a compilation of like your favorite mean tweets that you've had since directed towards you since you joined the UFC. I want to ask, after your win against Jeka, did you notice like an uptick trend, or you got any positive comments? Like
I did.
Nice?
Yeah, there was a ton. There's a ton more. It's still funny because people will they'll still hate on me, and now like it's just a joke. Like I don't care. Because
yeah, what are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
Why should I?
Dude, MMA fans are brutal too. Like every MMA
I know.
fan, short-term memory where it's like, "Oh, what'd you do last time?" And if it's bad, like, "Fuck you, you suck." So like,
yeah. It's funny. I was telling a couple buddies of mine, fighter friends of mine. Chris Curtis is one of them, and there's a Seinfeld episode where Jerry Seinfeld's doing a show, and he gets heckled by this woman, and coincidentally, he knows the woman because she works with his friend. And so he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go heckle her at work. And so he goes and like she's in meetings and he's just heckling her and making fun of like the work she does. And I was like, I work in software. Like it wouldn't be hard for me to dox these people and figure out like, their work email and everything and then just share all their mean tweets like in their company directory.
Oh man.
And I was
man.
like, I could just heckle them and like just like send all their rude and mean stuff like over, like I'll find their work email and I'll just start trashing on them to like their entire company directory. And honestly, you can buy all the emails from different company directories. There's like so much software out there that I could exploit.
That's pretty funny, man. But while we're on the topic of that win over Jeka, like with your jiu-jitsu background and skill, like I'd assume that's probably your go-to kind of thing. So what's your favorite submission to set up and hit and why?
I have a really good guillotine. I can hit it from a lot of different angles and positions. And it's very, I don't know how I use it. Like it's very versatile. Like you can set up other submissions off of it and run different reaction chains. So I would probably say the guillotine, but it's funny, the triangle is the first submission I ever hit in jiu-jitsu. It's the first submission I ever hit in a jiu-jitsu tournament. It's the first submission I ever hit in MMA. It's the first submission I ever hit in the UFC. So like I guess the triangle's got to be it, but I don't know. I love the guillotine. It's my favorite. I spam guillotines.
Yeah, the first time I got subbed was by a power guillotine at training not too long ago, and I was sitting there like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, man! Like, I can't be doing this." But
yeah. So it's funny. The guillotine's actually what I hit on Jeka first, and there's a little transition from a guillotine to a triangle, and so he gave me the look I needed, and that's what locked up the triangle was. So if you go through, you'll see I actually hit a guillotine. He starts defending the guillotine. I go right into a triangle choke,
Right.
and then the arm.
the arm
was
bar
there.
was there too, and yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
man. And kind of talking about that last fight a little bit more, like I heard you talk about like how great the vibes were going to your last camp. You were like everything is kind of clicking right now, and then obviously you followed it up with the performance you had. So how do you kind of build upon that momentum going into your next fight?
Just rinse and repeat. Like I wrote down the whole process of like everything that I did different that camp, and everything that I was doing different from a mindset and the way that we approached it, the way we game planned it. I actually went back out to California to go train with Jiva, who's I'm a black belt under, and we had Jiva in the corner, and so we made several changes that I think were beneficial for me from a growth standpoint. And it was my first two fights in the UFC. Steven was also in fight camp. So my first fight, he was getting ready for the Michelle Pereira fight, and then my next fight, he was getting ready for Shavkat. And so we're a small team, and so it's kind of hard to like split, and especially like when you're a month apart. So like where I'm fighting a month later, it was hard because after Steven's fight against Shavkat, he was injured. So then I lost one of my main training partners, and then it was Christmas break, so I had nobody. And yeah, I mean the whole last month of my training camp for the Gene Silva fight, I didn't have anybody. And we didn't, and also they switched opponents too. So we went from Gabriel Santos to Gene Silva, and so we had to like change up our whole entire game plan. And then there's no film on Gene Silva at the time, and so we didn't even know what to expect. And so we're just kind of like we just winged it. And I also was like very sick going into that fight, and so it was terrible. Like it was just an awful fight. And now we know how good Gene Silva is, and that defeat's aged very well. So.
Right.
I was gonna say, man, like that guy is a fucking monster. So like, it's
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
he's good. At the end of the day, I mean, it aged well. Like, I think out of all of his people, that I'm the only one who didn't go out. So
Yeah, you could take that as a win right there, man.
yeah.
But while we're on the topic a little bit of upstate karate, I know you probably get this question a ton, but what is it like to be around Wonderboy and just kind of be in the presence of him? And is there anything that like the fans may not know?
Dude, he's awesome. He's probably one of my closest friends. He's the type of guy where, you know, we can chit chat about whatever, and we go on double dates all the time, the movies, and just hang out. I don't know. So we both like are big nerds too. We'll like nerd out on like Harry Potter and different animes and different like comic books and stuff like that. So it's always fun. But yeah, I would say like something that the fans don't know, he hums constantly. He's always humming. Like he's always humming. He will always just be humming whatever tune, whatever. Like I don't even think he recognizes that he hums, but he always hums. So that's the one like Wonder Boy fact that you can take. If you're like with him long enough, you'll just hear him humming. He'll just be by himself, just like dude all the time. It's freaking awesome.
Funny.
That guy is always happy.
Gonna ask what has been like your biggest takeaway starting to train with Wonderboy, you know, getting to know him through the years, training with him. Like what has he taught you? Like would you say that's been like the biggest factor in like you becoming the fighter that you are now?
I think the biggest thing is just like having fun, you know, and just not taking yourself so seriously. Um and I feel like the way like he loses so gracefully, like when he does lose, it's just like, man, that sucked. Oh well, you know. And it hurts, it stings, but I think when you just take that approach where you're just like, all right, on to the next one, you know, it makes it a little bit easier to handle. And yeah, I think he's been like an awesome example, and he's always like it's fun. Like it's fun. We'll come in and I'll have an idea on a move, and then I'll show him, and then he'll be like, "Oh, what if we did this, and this with it?" Like instead of being like, "No, that's stupid. Like why would you ever do that?" Like he's like, "Let's see if we can hit it in sparring against some of our amateurs," and uh, yeah. So then we just have fun with it. Like that's probably the biggest thing is like you can still do like I think that like breeds creativity and just that artistry is just having fun and setting up an environment where you're working hard but you're still having fun and you're not like having to win every round and having to win because I've been in those rooms too where it's like everybody's just trying to win all the time and it's just not a long term that's not a great environment. Like you're not going to succeed long term. And I think the reason he's had the career and the career trajectory he's had is because he we're competitive when we need to be competitive, but we also will have fun when we need to have fun.
All right, love it. And then going on from that, as I say, it's been a year since you've last fought. I know you posted recently, you're ready to get back in there. Is there any timeline for you about when you might be starting camp, any opponents, anything? I'm sure you can't share anything crazy, but
I don't have anything. I don't have anything booked. I've been asking for a year now. I don't know. I wouldn't mind going in fighting one of the Chinese guys in Shanghai. That would be fun. I made that known that I wouldn't mind going to Shanghai and fighting. Um, I stylistically like the Chinese guys and I like we match up fairly well. So I don't know. I think and where I'm at in the UFC and where they're at in the UFC, like it's competitive and from an experience standpoint, like they've got deep records, I've got a deep record. So that'd be fun. I really wanted to fight in Nashville with Wonderboy. And there's a couple guys where I was like, oh yeah, me versus that Italian kid Manalo. I was like, that would be a good one, or me versus Stephen Wynn. I don't know. There's a lot of guys on the roster that I'm like, yeah, some of these guys that are just fresh off Contender Series that or off Contender Series like a year or two ago that I think would be good and fun. But I'm not picky. I let my manager kind of deal with all that stuff.
Yeah,
They've literally
definitely.
everybody they put in front of me, I've said yes. There's only one fight they wanted me to fight in Macau, and I was traveling, so I couldn't fight in Macau. So I had to turn that down because I had prior work commitments.
Yeah, definitely. We'd all love to see you back in there soon. So hopefully we can get something going to get you back in there. And we're starting to wrap it up towards the end. Just a few more questions, but I know we've touched on you have businesses outside of the UFC. You're an entrepreneur yourself. So how do you go about balancing your life at home, being the entrepreneur you are with your job, and then also training and being a professional fighter?
So you got to learn how to switch roles when the time is right. So I have like a really structured day. So I wake up, I get ready, I do first couple like morning meetings and empty my inbox and all that. Then I go, I train, then I come back, I then switch roles, I go back into work mode, and I have the rest of my meetings and I have the rest of my to-do list. Then after that, boom, I switch over to being dad and a husband, and we do like family dinner and things like that, or we go into the activities, whatever my kids are doing, and then boom, I switch back over into fighting, and then on the way home, it's usually time where me and my wife will watch TV together and wind it down for the night. So it's just having a structure and then knowing like what role I'm gonna be in, and then having the ability to shift into that role from a mindset perspective.
Yeah, that's a packed schedule, man. You're making me think like I could definitely do more with my days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean it can be hard. Um, but I also like I don't know, when I don't have my schedule, I start to go crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And moving on from that, I was going to ask, who would you put on your MMA Mount Rushmore? Oh, 4 guys, girls.
My Mount Rushmore, I would say it's got to be John Jones, um, Anderson Silva, GSP, and then just from not necessarily from like a greatness standpoint, but like revolutionize the sport. You got to go with Connor because he's the one who really brought the money and the whole two champ status, double champ. Uh, so I mean, you've got to go with Connor just for what he did and pushing the sport. I feel like he's the one who pushed the sport very, very mainstream. But
Yeah, I
then
mean
from
MMA.
technique and GOAT status, it's got to be the three: John Jones, Anderson, and GSP.
And you got Mighty Mouse just sitting right behind the corner, like,
Yeah. I mean, Mighty
it's
Mouse.
such
But
a
the
tough
thing is, like
question.
the smaller weights, dude. I can't. And I'm part of the smaller weights too, but I don't know.
No, it
That's
is tough.
mine. I'm gonna defend it. That's my from a business perspective. Connor, from like did amazing things through multiple generations of the sport. You gotta
Okay.
go with the other three.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they
definitely
lived
hard
through
to argue.
different eras. They lived through different, and so did Mighty Mouse. Like Mighty Mouse would have to be a fifth. But see, I'm not gonna put Khabib because Khabib didn't go like through as many eras, and he had a lot of times where he wasn't fighting and he wasn't super active either. So in terms of like the other three, John Jones, GSP, and Anderson, they were in that pioneer era into like the peak golden era, and then even to the beginning of the era that we're in now.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And to wrap it up, if you could pick one person throughout history to train with for a day, fighter or non-fighter, who would it be and why?
Let's see. Somebody to train with. Man, just thinking of this.
It's not an easy question either.
I have a couple. First that came to my mind was Teddy Roosevelt, just because I mean he was awesome. He was a fighter and cool president. But like if I'm gonna go like historical figure, like really historical figure, I don't know. It'd have to be one of the big like great generals. The dude who wrote the Five Rings,
Leonidas
Musmashi.
Musashi.
Yeah, Musashi. That'd be a good one. Alexander the Great would be a good one. Napoleon Bonaparte would be a good one. Like I would go with like all like the big like generals and the people who are like just masters of war.
100%. And that's all we have for you today. So I just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to join us tonight. Hopefully we didn't take up too much of your time, and we're all excited to see you back in the
No,
octagon.
man, I appreciate it. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
100%.